The haunting of Grayson Manor. The wind howled through the skeletal trees that surrounded Grayson Manor, a decaying mansion nestled on the outskirts of a forgotten town. The place had stood vacant for decades, its windows cracked and covered in ivy, the doors warped by time. The townspeople had long since stopped whispering about it. But some things, they say, never fade, especially the horrors of the past. It was on a fog-choked evening in late October that Olivia first saw the manor. She had moved to the nearby town to escape the noise and chaos of city life, seeking peace in the solitude of the countryside. Her curiosity about the mansion grew with every passing day. No one seemed willing to talk about it, and whenever she asked, the conversation would quickly turn cold. The locals called it the Grayson curse. Some said it was the house itself that drove people mad. Others claimed the ghosts of the Grayson family still roamed its halls. Ignoring the warnings, Olivia decided to explore the manor herself. On the day she ventured to Grayson Manor, the sun was just beginning to dip behind the hills, casting long shadows across the overgrown grounds. The fog rolled in thick, turning the world around her into a blur of muted gray. The manor stood before her, towering and imposing, with its broken windows and sagging roofline. The iron gate creaked as she pushed it open, the sound eerily loud in the stillness. As she walked closer, the air grew colder, as though the house itself was exhaling a frozen breath. Olivia hesitated at the front door, her heart beating faster, but the desire for answers pushed her forward. She stepped inside, the floorboards groaning under her weight. The scent of mold and decay filled her nostrils, but she pressed on, her flashlight cutting through the darkness. The air felt thick, as though it were pressing in on her from all sides. Dust hung in the air like an oppressive shroud, and each step she took seemed to stir up memories long buried in the walls. The hallway stretched out before her, a long, narrow passage lined with faded portraits of grim-faced people whose eyes seemed to follow her every move. She could almost hear the echoes of laughter, faint but unmistakable, coming from somewhere deeper within the house. Olivia's breath caught in her throat. "Hello," she called out, her voice sounding small and fragile in the vast emptiness. No answer. But then she heard it, the sound of footsteps. Slow, deliberate. A shiver ran down her spine as the footsteps seemed to echo back at her, as though someone, or something, was walking just behind her. Olivia spun around, but the hallway was empty. Her heart raced, and she cursed herself for being so reckless. Maybe she should leave. But something, some deep instinct, told her to keep going. She made her way toward the grand staircase, the banister broken and twisted like the bones of some ancient beast. As she climbed, the temperature dropped even further, and a chill swept over her. The silence was deafening now, only broken by the distant sound of her own breathing. Then, as she reached the top of the stairs, she saw it. A figure, pale and translucent, standing in the doorway of a room at the end of the hall. It was a woman, dressed in an old-fashioned gown that seemed to shimmer faintly in the dim light. Her face was obscured by a veil, but Olivia could make out the shape of her hands, outstretched as though beckoning her. Her mouth moved, but no sound came. Olivia's breath caught in her throat. This was no trick of the light. The figure was real, terrifyingly real. But something else felt wrong. It wasn't just the ghostly apparition that sent a wave of nausea through her. It was the cold emptiness in her chest, the hollow feeling as though she were being slowly consumed by the house itself. Without thinking, she took a step forward. The woman's head jerked toward her, her veil lifting slightly to reveal a face twisted in a grotesque grimace. Her eyes, black as midnight, void of life, stared straight at Olivia. The figure's mouth opened wide, revealing sharp, jagged teeth, and in a voice that was not a voice, but a low, guttural whisper, it spoke. "Get out!" The words echoed in Olivia's mind, not spoken, but felt, as though the house itself was speaking through the ghost. Before she could react, the temperature plummeted, and the lights flickered. The woman lunged. Olivia screamed and stumbled backward, tripping over the steps and tumbling to the ground. Her flashlight rolled across the floor, casting erratic shadows against the walls. When she looked up, the woman was gone. Heart pounding, Olivia scrambled to her feet. She ran toward the stairs, but before she could reach the bottom, a cold hand gripped her ankle, pulling her back. Her blood ran cold as the figure reappeared before her, now standing at the bottom of the stairs. Its face was even closer, the eyes blacker than before, the smile stretched unnaturally wide. Olivia struggled, but the grip on her ankle tightened. The whisper returned. "Get out. Now." Olivia yanked her leg free, panic rising in her chest. She bolted for the front door, her mind racing. She had to get out. She had to escape. As she reached the door, the sound of laughter, distant and mocking, filled the air. The walls themselves seemed to pulse, as if the house was alive, feeding on her fear. She slammed the door open and fled into the fog. Behind her, the manor stood silent, the shadows stretching long in the dim light. Olivia didn't dare look back. The next day, the townspeople found her wandering in the street, her eyes wide with terror, her skin pale and clammy. She refused to speak of what had happened at Grayson Manor, but one thing was clear. She would never return. And no one would. For Grayson Manor was not just haunted by the ghosts of the Grayson family, but by something far older, far darker, a presence that fed on the living. A presence that would never let anyone leave once they entered. In time, the town forgot about Olivia's brief visit. But the manor still stood, its windows staring like empty eyes into the night, waiting for its next victim.